Whenever I talk to you about stigma and how it can damage us, I tell a story of something that happened in Edmonton almost 20 years ago now. A young man with a history of violence and drug use pounded on his brother's house late one night. The man had his younger brother arrested and the next morning went out of town for the day. While he was gone, his younger brother was released from jail without telling the police telling anybody. He got in a taxi to his older brother's house. When arriving, he beat the taxi driver to unconsciousness, broke into his brother's house, and violently killed his sister-in-law. When the police responded to the taxi driver's attack, this troubled young man walked up to the police car and got into the back seat. The family was very vocal about the need for changes to the justice system so that victims could be informed when their attackers were released from jail. They lobbied for extra treatment beds for drug addicts and harsher treatments for drug dealers. Buried deep in the reports, very deep, was that this young man had schizophrenia and had used street drugs for years to self-medicate. No one in his immediate family ever mentioned this, that this young man had a mental illness. When he came to trial, his attorney never admitted any evidence in court about his illness. In fact, he put on no defense at all and called 0 witnesses. He went off quietly to jail as a dangerous offender for the rest of his life. His older brother ran for public office on a platform of getting tough on criminals. It was easier on this family to believe that their brother's son, nephew, was a violent drug addict than to publicly acknowledge that their family, somebody from their family, was ill and needed treatment. It was easier on this young man to accept punishment for a crime he committed during a psychotic episode than to admit he had the illness of schizophrenia. This is the face of stigma, that it's easier to admit your sibling is a crazed killer than to admit they have this illness, schizophrenia, that I say so often. In my own family, I faced a different kind of stigma. I faced embarrassment. There are members of my family that become angry when I appear in the paper or give public speeches. They waver between wanting me completely sedated so as to make all my decisions for me and hide me in the basement, to wanting me to work a full-time job in the suburbs like normal people, and let alone the idea of volunteering as a professor. I think the strangest brush I had with stigma was when I first started introducing my wife to my friends and family. Almost everybody asked her if she had schizophrenia. She got used to parroting, "No, I don't have schizophrenia," that when we went to dinner with one of my sisters for the first time, she blurted out, when my sister went to ask her something completely unrelated, "No, I don't have schizophrenia." The funniest thing is that those who didn't ask just assumed, and months later, she said somebody even asked her a month ago if she had schizophrenia. And we'd been married since 2006. And months later, they were shocked to find out my wife didn't have a mental illness like mine. Even 6 years later, some people still thought she had schizophrenia and is just hiding it, even 20 years later. If I was deaf or blind, nobody would ask my wife on first meeting if she was blind or deaf unless she was blind or deaf. For those of us with schizophrenia, people just automatically assume that we are so damaged that a normal person wouldn't want to marry us. I believe that for a long time. So you see, stigma takes many guises and rears its head when we are least expecting it. So how do we fight it? By education, education, and more education. So I was afraid when I was getting married to Canada that I'd walk up, trip, throw up on her shoes, ruin her shoes, and then somebody from behind the tapestries, they have tapestries there, will jump out and taser me. Anyways, the Governor General starts approaching me, and she had her gaggle of the guys with the clear earpieces. They're like literally standing eagle-eye looking at the grannies who are getting the Order of Canada. They had a real one, a schizophrenic who's 6'5", who towers over her. If I fell on her, I'd crush her. So they all went to attention as soon as she came closer to me. And the closer, I didn't notice this at the time. I would have been mortified. I would have probably frozen up or said something wrong. I thought everything was okay because she was okay. I was just focused on her, and she seemed friendly enough. But they actually were afraid of me. They gave me the highest award in the country, and they're still afraid of me. They should be afraid of my wife because she might sue them. She's a lawyer.